Well. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Epic Heathen Podcast one more time. I'm your host Abel, aka Grillo do Demo, and what you have just heard is Francesco's bamboozling interpretation of a fragment from Tuleen, ajettu. He recorded it with a Greek bouzouki and some sort of pedal effects, I don't know. Anyway, Tuleen, ajettu, as if it needed an introduction, right, is the second song in Hävitetty, which is exactly what this episode is about. In our previous episode, we expressed our thoughts about the album in general, we analyzed the first song, and today we will be focusing on the second one only. Something went wrong when setting up the recording, and I ended up not getting the separate audio tracks, so I couldn't fix the moments when we talk over each other, but honestly there weren't so many, so it's not a big deal, I think. The recording was made very long ago. We had this conversation in January 2023. It had also been 3 months since the previous session, which is rare in us because we usually try to do the 2 sessions in consecutive days or something like this, but this time it took like 3 months. And in the meantime, I started writing my Moonsorrow book. That's more or less when I started. Now, that book has already been announced, and it will be released by the British publishing house Cult Never Dies in early 2025. It was originally planned for the end of this year, 2024, but it had to be pushed a bit by the publisher. The title will be Home of the Waves, Conversation with Moonsorrow, and it will include countless hours of interviews with the band members and other people who worked with them over the years. You will hear some extracts from those interviews in this episode, so keep your ears open. You can follow us on instagram.com/moonsorrow.podcast, on the Facebook page Moonsorrow Biography and Podcast, and on the YouTube channel Moonsorrow Podcast, where you will also find, besides the episodes, you will also find some extras. Today I would like to do a little call to action. I would like to ask you to leave us a comment somewhere, whether saying something you like or don't like about the podcast, or just telling us where you're listening from. That's fine. Just give me some, some response. And if you have any ideas for content, do let us know. What would you like to see? What would you like to hear? Any episode ideas? Any topics beside album analysis? Anything you would like us to do? We're listening. Let us know. Okay, this is a long enough intro already. Thanks for listening, and let's get to the conversation. Today I have the usual team with me. Only Alexei is missing, but we have Mikkel. Say hello, please. How are you?
Hello. Can't believe it's already been 3 months. That's a long time ago, but a lot has happened since then.
Yep. Francesco, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Nice to see you.
Hello, Sasan.
Hello. I got a wisdom tooth out a few days ago, and it's quite painful. I think I have what's called dry socket. Just don't go to the dentist, audience at home. The wisdom tooth was not hurting me. Anyway, I'm here, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I heard there was like a bit more reverb to your voice. Now I understand.
Oh, yeah, I have a little echo chamber in there.
Thomas, hello, how are you?
Bonsoir, bonsoir. I'm great. I'm great. Technically, it's been 3 months, but we changed year, so it's way more than that. And everything is just great work, amazing. Once in my life, amazing.
New year, new you.
literally, literally,
Yeah.
it's the best version of me ever.
You can tell Tomas has not gone to the dentist recently.
and actually, it's false. I went to the dentist 2 weeks ago, and I have to
Oh
go
no.
back.
How are you,
Alright.
Abel?
All good.
Okay.
Quite busy with yet another Moonsorrow project. But news will come when they have to come.
Yeah.
All right. So, Tuleen, ajettu. I suppose we all like this song. We already spoke about how we like the album in general the previous time, so I guess we don't have to repeat. But this second song, I think it's a bit more compact than the first, meaning that the first one seems to end a couple of times. This one feels a lot more like one that doesn't end in the middle or something. And I've been listening to it yesterday and today, even though I have not been much of a Moonsorrow mood lately. It was almost like a task. Oh fuck, I have to listen to this. Don't get me wrong, I love it, obviously. I mean, no need to say. But yeah, well, I was not there mentally. But you know, when certain parts come, it always hits me like, oh man, yes, I didn't realize I really needed this.
Yeah, I feel
Sure.
I feel the same way. It's we talked about this. I think this song specifically is my favorite song, and I don't listen to it very often. Partly because of the time commitment, but partly because, I want to make sure that I'm focusing on it and not tuning it out. And it's not really music to, like, I don't know, run errands to and go grocery shopping to. So, yeah, I listened to it not as many times as I wanted to, but I think I pretty much can recite the whole song from memory. So, it should be all right for the conversation. But yeah, I totally agree. Definitely, maybe this is something we talked about in either the last episode or the Verisaket episode, but we talked about how they're so good at setting an atmosphere that you think you're not going to be in the mood for the song, but by the time it gets to halfway through the song, there's so much that's already put you in the mood for the song. So, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
That's a problem I have. Well, a problem, quote unquote, with some of my favorite music, that I like it so much that I only listen to it if I'm really focusing, and as a result, I never listen to it.
You're stuck with all the mediocre shit instead that you
Yeah,
can listen
maybe
to
this
in the
doesn't-
background.
Maybe this doesn't happen with some really, really good albums that I really like from Judas Priest or Blind Guardian. But for example, Queen 2, one of my absolute favorite albums in my life. I mean, that really requires me to focus all the way through. It's not so long, but then I love it and I never listen to
Yeah.
it. Same with Hävitetty or with a few more.
I have to say, I really enjoy that song for a couple of reasons. The first one is the shortest of the two, and that's a huge deal. No, also there is this part, we'll talk about it later, but around 8:30, this kind of clean vocals, almost choir, that sell me the song the first time I listened to it. And I was thinking about it this morning. I woke up at 5. I went into the forest to record some dawn choruses. So it's the time where the birds are the most active during the beginning, just before the sunrise. And I was listening to that song in my car, and I was like, this song is on a linear medium, exactly what every video game music should sound in terms of transition. It transitions so well every time. And of course, it's easier because it's a linear stuff. But this song is a masterpiece.
Now that you mentioned transitioning, of course, this is a topic for another episode, but I feel a bit of the lack of that in Jumal and Aika. We will get to that, of course, in its episode, but...
Well, and Tuleen. It's a lot of their songs are sectioned, you know?
Yeah.
But this one definitely, you're right, is a very fluid from... it feels very much like one big thing, which we'll probably also talk about. The vinyl release splits it in half, and I think the first track, it's not as bad, or I haven't listened to the vinyls in a long time, but Tuleen, I can imagine, like, you know, there's plenty of good spots to just flip the vinyl over, but on Tuleen ajettu, that specifically, like, that is a really awkward thing to split in half.
Yeah, I think it's at the beginning of the tremolo, right before the blast beat. I think that's where it breaks.
That's what I remember as well.
Oh no, that's a terrible place. That's like the best transition.
It's not good.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
You're going to hear it in a moment, and you will notice that there is a wind effect. The reason is that Henry first took the original master file, split it in two, added this wind effect, the fade in, fade out, and then sent the file for mastering, for vinyl mastering, which means that a dynamic master of the full song simply doesn't exist, not even in the vaults. Had to cut somewhere. Not many options anyway.
Yeah, it's I don't know where else you would cut the song into two splits or something, but
yeah, maybe at minute 3 you can, but then it doesn't balance the size of the vinyl. So
yeah,
And
maybe
that's
it should have been compressed into one side.
I honestly prefer the first track, but this is also very personal because it has some shamanic elements which make it like something never heard before. And they came back some years later in New Mountain Aika, the same shamanic sounds, if I can call it them like that. But they are very unique, I think. And also it is a little stronger than the first track. I mean, more aggressive, at least in the beginning. So it gives a different feeling, but it stays in the same melancholic mood, I'd say.
yeah, the central part maybe is more aggressive, not just the blast beat, but around it. But yeah, it has the beginning and especially the ending that go back to the Moonsorrow we know and love.
That's
The
the only
melancholy
song I
and stuff.
really want to see live. Like, the one I want to see the most, for sure. I mean, it would mean everything. I know that they played it when they released the album on the tour, but in a compressed version. So I don't think they never played the full one, right?
That's correct, yeah. They omit the last part. Well, of course, the intro, because it's a very long intro, very atmospheric,
Yeah.
but also the last part, which is...
So,
I think,
so
most
they
beautiful.
removed the last part. Okay.
Yeah. Which, you know, I understand, but it's maybe the big release of the song to me, and to me it's pretty indispensable. So, of course, I would love to see it live as well, but...
I mean,
that would be
if they can play Tuleen in a full one full set, why cut the other song when it's shorter?
So maybe that last part is a bit more awkward to arrange live or something like that. I don't really know. But then again, if they can play the ending of how do you say, of
Kapunki.
yeah, thank you, that one. If they can play that,
yeah.
In the I
No
remember
problem.
in the documentary sessions, Henry said it was Michi, I think, who said at some point, yeah, sometimes we rehearse a song in a certain way when we start playing it, because theoretically the last part is too hard or too complicated or whatever. And this happened with Sankari Tarina and with Pakana Yuhla. Both of them were playing without the last part. And then one day they simply decided to play with that, and they could so easily. And what was the big deal? No big deal. It was all in their heads. So maybe, I don't know, I see it a bit less likely that they will play Tuleen, ajettu, but never say never, I guess.
There's something about Moonsorrow that if we rehearse song in a certain way, if we cut something out, we might never play it again in the whole format. And it happened with Sankari Tarina and some other songs as well. And it's because we don't practice that much. We don't rehearse so often. Some years ago we realized, okay, we have the ending of Sankari Tarina that we never played anywhere. And there's no reason to it. Like, really, there's no reason. And for many years we didn't even play Sankari Tarina because it was supposed to be too difficult. And there's, like, when you think of it, there's nothing difficult. Ever since we played it on almost every show. And yeah, we left it out, and at some point we spent 10 minutes and we played it again. Like, there's no really reasons why we cut these things out and not take it back, but it happens.
For Pakana Yuhla, instead of adding the last part, you just removed it completely from the sets forever.
Yeah, same thing happened with Pakana Juhla. From the very beginning, we didn't play the last part. It's also the same thing. There's nothing too complicated about it. But we left it out in the first time we played it live, and we never thought of, okay, let's do it completely. Until Marco said, okay, I'm really fed up with playing this song. I'm really fed up. If you don't play it full, then let's not play it at all anymore.
In the track list of the Amnesty bootleg, there is a Tuleen, ajettu shortened track, I think.
Yeah, that's correct. And also in this Romanian video in Romania, in Yash or Yashi or whatever it's pronounced, there is a video, and I think it's on YouTube, also from the same tour. So yeah, fortunately there are recordings of that. I cannot believe that there are several bootleg recordings of Tuleen, ajettu and 0 of Tuli Mirsky. That really annoys me.
Yeah, and that comes from me that's seen that song 3 times. It makes no sense.
Fuck you, man. Stop repeating that in every fucking episode.
Tan 10 tin. Editing in.
Actually, now there is a full recording of Tuli Mirsky live. If you go to our YouTube channel, which is simply called Moonsorrow Podcast, you will see a full concert from May 2023, and they played Tuli Mirsky in full there.
Tin 10 ton. Editing done.
I would rather trade it to listen to Tuleen, ajettu 3 times. You can have Tuli Mirsky.
But I think I have the solution. You should ask the guys to just make a mix between those very long songs that never are live and Napalm Death, like something like that. Very short. Just if we pitch it, probably.
You're picking, but why?
Do we want to start talking about the song from the start? How do we want to structure the conversation?
Okay. Yep. Let's start. The song starts with the famous. Yeah, there is this famous photo of Henry recording Snowflakes.
Yeah, that's from there.
Yeah. It's from there, and recording the wind there.
Yeah.
So, I guess the beginning uses a combination of fake wind, because when it sounds very beautiful,
yeah,
and that's usually fake. and the real wind is just.
I recorded wind for my album, and it all sounds like. And I found this. I pirated a entire album of wind noises by like David Lynch's sound guy put out like an album of wind noises, and all the tracks have like low moaning or like high screaming wind, or so you just sort of like mix them around. That I imagine Henry probably did something like that, mixed with his own wind noises.
I agree with that. I try to record wind every time when I can. When I'm out on vacation, wind is always the same, but you love to call it the wind from that place. That's very fun on the file.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very, very difficult and annoying to properly record. Usually it will screw every take you want to record about other stuff. And when you want to record wind properly, it will not behave the way you want. So that's really, really painful to record some wind, in my opinion. So as... I don't know if Henry was already working in video games or stuff at that time, but probably he had his hands on some other recordings that could be used to enhance in a way the intro. I'm assuming that because I have to do that for a French black metal band right now to make them some intros and outros with sound design. And Sasan, if you want some banks, just reach me.
I might just have you do it next time.
I have too much stuff to send to you, but yeah, I think you're right. Probably it's a mix between the recording on location, which never go the way you want. Sometimes it's okay, but it's usually like bad. Oh, I did not think about that stuff. And I think maybe, it's a combination of two sounds, something already recorded, took from another media, and his own recordings of that stuff. Reality can be deceiving sometimes.
It's really interesting because I think bands and just stuff, the more I learn about like audio mixing and engineering, the more something sounds like inside or outside, right? Like the quality of the sound, like the what does the snare sound like when you hit the snare drum, right? How does it echo? You kind of get a sense of like, okay, I'm inside a space. Like if you imagine like a vocal effects that are done like you're in a church hall, right? It sounds very much like the place you're in. And this song, like when those drums come in, it sounds very evocative of a place in my mind. And I wonder whether you guys also like imagine, there's a fire and there's some sort of shamanic ritual, and it's like outside, but not in like the clear open, either in like dense woods or some sort of kind of enclosed outdoor space. And I wonder how much of that is sound design and how much of it is me just sort of imagining based on the themes.
I have very short imagination, and the little imagination I may have disappears when I'm given a visual already. So if I listen to the song and like imagine pictures, it's the pictures in the booklet, like this blue color, dark blue, not even the cover necessarily, but there are, inside there are like some leaves, or it's mostly blue. And there is the photo with the members, and then my mind is dark blue, and with maybe a bit mixing that with the Somewhere Far Beyond Blind Guardian cover, which is also blue with a blue forest, because it's a bit more, how do you say, more figurative than the inside of the. So mix that with the dark blue of the booklet, and that's where I am. I'm totally, how do you say, influenced by that. I don't have my own personality or opinions.
Shout out to the Somewhere Far Beyond tour last year. That was insane.
Yeah.
Man, okay, super short parenthesis. I didn't see that live, but I saw a video, and fucking Hansi Kurj is saying, okay, now the next song is a song it's very short, and introducing the Black Chamber, which is a 1 minute long song. This is a song which is about a song and this and that and so and so. We never played it, and this and that. He's talking for 2 minutes. And he sings the song 1 minute, and then he talks again. Okay, I hope you like the song. Now the next is gonna be because there is the story and the elves and the dude. Just shut the fuck up. Sing the fucking songs.
Yeah, I don't know why he continued on with that. That was so weird, but it was a fucking great show anyway.
Okay, back to Moonsorrow.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the 5/4 time signature that Moonsorrow goes back to a lot. And this is like the song where they do it. I think the first 1/3 of this song is all in 5/4 time signature. It's the Mission Impossible theme, but instead of being dun dun da da dun dun da da, it's dun dun da da dun dun da da. But the whole but it flows so nice from what a lot of bands will do is if they're gonna have like an odd time signature, and I don't mean like a jazz band, I mean like like a metal band. If they're gonna have an odd time signature section, it's gonna be like the 5/4 section. So there's like a riff or a melody that's in 5/4, and then you're back out into something else, right? This song starts in 5, and it goes through so many different ups and downs and variations and riffs and melodies, all in 5. And then it's not until the big choir part that changes. And I think that's why a big part of the reason why that moment feels like such a big release. But it doesn't sound, it doesn't sound cut off. Like the melodies don't sound like parts of a melody. Like Money by Pink Floyd sounds a little bit cut off. Right, like you're expecting something, and you're kind of expecting like dum ba da dum bum 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 ba dum bum ba da dum, but they just like cut out one of the beats and make it a little. But when it comes to like the big first riff, the da gung ga da 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 gung ga na da gung ga na da gung ga na. It doesn't feel like a piece of it just got chopped off. And that's just really good writing. I mean, not that having the thing cut off there's no use for that, right? But it's a very different way of having 5/4 than people tend to think about. People think about like these odd time signatures as a tool you use to make the music sound weird or cut off or whatever. Like it has a very sort of like specific purpose. But a lot of folk music and a lot of traditional music, my understanding is also a lot of Finnish music is in that rhythm. And you can definitely see how entire songs would be in this feeling, and it's not there to sound weird. It's just a normal rhythm once you are playing it well, and everything's playing in that rhythm and not just forced into that rhythm.
Yeah, especially the beginning is very obvious, this 5, because it starts with the, I think it's even before Mitya comes in, it's like pum kam kam pum kam pum kam kam pum kam pum kam, and then Mitya comes da la be la da be la be. We spoke about these time signatures once, I remember, and you and I, Sasan, we were in this analysis of some, probably in Raunioila, and I was thinking about it because you said, and it's right, that 5/4 and 10/8, mathematically they are equivalent.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about it, and I think in music it matters because it's the way you subdivide the. So in the beginning, it's clearly a 5/4, I guess. Clearly a 5 because it's kuntan tan kuntan kuntan tan kuntan kuntan tan. But then later in the song, but still before the big choir that you said changes everything, it becomes a 10, and I think it becomes a 10 because what is the part? So later more things come in.
Yeah.
And it's like so where we had like 2 stresses or like 2 main beats and 3 smaller ones, now we have 4 big ones and 6 smaller ones. So it used to be punta ta punta punta ta punta, and it becomes punta ta punta ta punta 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 ta punta ta punta 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 ta punta ta punta punta. So it gets subdivided in a different way. That's why I think it matters from 10 to 8 and from 5 to 4. There is a difference between them.
Tan 10 tin, editing in.
Yeah, this came up in the past, but I think this song is a bad example for that. I couldn't find a fragment where it actually becomes that other timestamp.
Tin 10 ton, editing done.
Yes, and to go back to our conversation that we had before, I was like, yeah, the bottom number doesn't matter. That's just imaginary. That's the what's going on there is, and I think like Henry would have strong feelings on this. We talked to Henry, and I was talking about the time signature of something, and he's like, oh, but that's not actually what it is. It sounds like that, but that's not what it is. And I because he is a composer, like he thinks of things in either in sheet music or in like he has to program it into the computer. So if he is deciding, like writing it for musicians, because the point of sheet music is that the person needs to know how to play the music without having to hear it, right? They have to be able to read what the music's supposed to sound like. And so more instructions, like the difference between 5/4 and 10/8 or 10/4 or whatever, those matter then because you're trying to describe a concept to somebody who can't hear the music. But taking someone like Marco, for example, Marco says he doesn't count when he plays the drums. He's not playing going like, okay, 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. He's just kind of singing the melodies in his head and just playing along. I think if you're actually playing the music and you have a good feel for it, like the difference between those doesn't super matter. And so is there a difference? Yeah, there's definitely a difference, or else there wouldn't be 2 different terms. but does it make a huge difference in how we talk about it? It can. Like another interesting part of the song is once Ville goes into the kind of sung vocals, the na 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 na. That part is still in 5, but the rhythm is much less like dun 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 dun. You know, it's much less emphasized in that way, and it's bigger and less rigid, but it's still in, you know, if you were counting 5, it would still loop in the right places. And yeah, I think one of the ways that the album has such good transitions is like those subtle changes from time signature to time signature, and there's a lot of them that I think will come up as we talk about the song, but yeah, they're sort of all over the place, where it's a very rhythmically driven song, which you wouldn't necessarily think about because there's so many big, massive, beautiful melodies. But when we go from section to section, that's mainly like you feel a new rhythm first before you're really sure what's going on melodically. So yeah, I think
sorry, finish.
No, that's it. It's a very rhythmically driven song.
If I can add to what you just said, that was really interesting. I'm again coming back to game audio and the way we treat and envision interactive sound. And I'm not at all a composer, and I always had huge problems when working on interactive music. And I think you clearly nailed the important point. It's the considering the transition from one time signature to another. You have to, of course, the sound should be as fluid in a way as possible, as smooth the transition, but it also transition with the rhythm you were mentioning, I think. And I think that's why I was saying that stuff about the song earlier. It transitioned just so well because it's very well written, and every piece of rhythm is just thought very well to announce the next one.
Anything else about this start of the song before we go into the, like, I guess the choir part would be the next part we haven't talked about?
Well, we have Mikkel doing his trademark. Is this the first time he's doing the
low vocals?
The super vocals?
Does he do something? Is there something like that on Jumalten Kaupunki? Is that him?
No, you mean in the intro?
Yeah, right. Was that Henry?
No, in the intro it was. I know because from the conversation then I asked Henry and he answered. It was Ville.
Right.
And with artificially lowered.
That's what it was.
Right.
For maximum masculinity.
That makes sense. Yeah, I kind of remember this, but it was a long conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess this would be the first time we've, right? I guess so.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
We should listen back to our previous episodes and see if we mentioned it or not.
We'll be back in 10 hours.
Yeah, so I think the instruments sound really beautiful right when they come in. There's a very like percussive like shoom boom 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 right off the bat. I think the mixing there is really beautiful. And there's a lot of, we talked about this on the first track, But another thing that I think is unique to this album is that they have acoustic guitars, but also electric guitars that are played clean. And I think you hear a sound from the beginning is also a little bit of like that mixed in, and the choir synth, or I don't know what you would call that, but there's like a vocal synth in there. It's kind of like a woman's voice.
Really?
That's how I hear it, but it kind of sounds like right before we go into the big heavy riff. Which they don't use very much either. Maybe I'm crazy, but I've always heard.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Like a female choir, like this.
So what time is it?
Ethereal.
Abel, what's the time on that?
2:28. You can hear it.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The whole first part, I don't know how many minutes. The first 12 minutes of the song is like a big build-up with sub-build-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's going like this. Then, okay, I'm doing gestures in a podcast. Anyway, it's like this curve that goes up, and then at a point it goes a bit flat again and starts going up again, and then so the very beginning. We start with the drum, pum, 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 and then Mitya, and then another voice joins, and then another, and then the fourth one, and then there is also somewhere like a tambourines, and then like and then the whole band comes with the and actually there is a scream which I don't think I had noticed before, but it's but it's like super low. But it's a big scream. So yeah, it is there.
There's a lot of like folk instruments kind of layered into those first sections. I wonder what everything in that first section is. I'm not sure. I know. I mean, there's the like jaw harp or whatever.
Oh yeah.
There's the acoustic guitars, but feels like there's other layers of other things kind of floating around in there. Well, I mean, there's like synth like violins.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those instruments are real and how many are synthesizer effects.
Yeah, but it's like a lot of stuff, and a lot of things are doubled, like this one melody, but it's 2, maybe 3 instruments on top of each other. So it's hard to pick things out in an obvious way.
I think there is some another thing. It's not really on top of everything else on the intro, but you have this kind of deep, we call it a bed in sound design, but it's like this
foundation
droning.
Oh.
Like you come up on stage, and you just left your amps on, and you have this
feedback.
This one is very deep.
And
as you have the clean guitars, the Jew harp. Do we say Jew or mouth?
I think
harp?
it's
Because
both.
I heard both. Oh, yeah,
same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have the mouth harp also, and there is this kind of drony tone going on and on and on. Also, it's like you have this build up on the high end. I mean, not high end, but like mid high, and also the intro is progressing on the low end of the spectre, with this like rumbling tone going more and more stronger, if I can say so. And that introduces very well, I think, the guitars, the electric guitars, which are about to come pretty soon after that. And I think it's great. Love the low end.
Yeah.
So you mean like a droning sound always on the bottom?
Yeah, of course. Let's share some timings, but I'm around 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and you hear this kind of rumbly sound. It's really interesting in terms of mixing, because it just uses all the stereo you can in your headphones, for example. So you have your more high instruments, high-pitched instruments. You can just, that's not the good word, but picture them on your stereo image. And this one is just like the big foundation. We are going to this subtle ambience of wind and snow with this shamanic ritual and stuff. And we have this build-up. You are going to hear another metal song going up and up and up, but very smoothly. Yeah, that's this deep rumbling bass sound.
Now that you said where to find it, it's true. There is this
and
on the bottom.
It's really progressive, and we are used to listen to stuff like that, so it's not like annoying or stuff like that. It's just we are quietly transitioning. I think it's the episode of transition, probably. But
it's like an avalanche approaching. You start hearing a rumble. What is that? Look, it's there! And Billy screams because the avalanche is coming.
In a way, you can describe it like that, I think.
I think that kind of shows their influence from soundtracks, which is something they talk about a lot. But yeah, I think that's a really great example of it. Is it's a musical element that isn't exactly a musical instrument. It's more the way you would do sound design, like that low rumbling thing isn't a bass guitar. It's, just a sound that creates that feeling and that transition.
Yeah, but if it's the atmosphere that counts, at every trick matters, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really having trouble trying to describe this record as it is such a magnificent one, but I'm really wondering, since we all know how Henry's time was back then, how much of this he came up on his own. I mean, compared to showing the finished products to everyone else, or if he was involving them in the early stages as well, because since there's tons of layers that wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise, like all these little or screams or like drone noises in the background, it seems almost too much for one man, right? In that state of mind.
I think neither would surprise me. But what I will say, and I think Abel was about to say something, but what I would say is the thing about being in a particular state of mind, I think, when you're trying to make whatever kind of art, is it's not so much that you have the whole idea in your head. It's that when you hear something, you're either like, yes, that's exactly what this sounds or what this feels like that's right, or you hear it and you're like, no, that's not really it. So I think there's a certain sense of when you're trying to like capture an emotion, you kind of can just play hot or cold, just try different things, and then you'll recognize like, oh, that's right. At least in my experience, it's rare that I have an entire idea in my head, but what it kind of feels like is I'm just trying random shit, and when it is close to what I want, you can kind of like see it and keep following that path.
Yeah, exactly. What's the guy from Crowbar's name? The singer?
Crowbar?
No? Sludge metal bands.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
The guy from Down. Not Phil Anselmo. The other guy, the guitarist. Kirk Weinstein. Yeah, I remember him talking about he had trouble writing records, and like, how the fuck do I get on with this? And he mentioned that Phil Anselmo told him, just start with one riff, and you can always build up upon that riff, and you'll easily find the next one and the next one and the next one, and suddenly have a whole record based out of basically one riff.
Which is kind of what Henry said too, right?
Yeah,
he said
exactly.
That I wonder what the start of this song would have been, but if I had to guess, it might just be that first riff, the run dun 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 dun. Because everything just flows so smoothly from there, that I wonder if that's what started it.
Yeah, could be.
The choir part, we moving on there yet?
Just before going to the choir part, if I can add one last thing.
Yeah.
We are acknowledging it every time, but Ville's vocals, always great.
Yeah, man, increasingly. I mean, album after album.
If you check every time on your list, like new Moonsorrow album, Ville's vocal, better, great. It's on the first one, of course, but on this song too, they are amazing. I would have loved to ask Henry which microphone they used and in which room, because I'm a nerd, but they sound great.
Do you have the timestamp for the choir? Because I don't want to like go beyond
8:35, right?
Yeah. That's right. But before that, there is, as for something that is not so usual, at 6:30 there is like a nasal voice that says like it's 6:30, which is not super obvious because it's coupled together with a regular voice. But
you mean this kind of
with the same melody as in the very beginning that Mikkel was doing, but with a very nasal voice. I think that's very folkloric.
It's really it's probably not like in French we say a wink, un clin d'œil, but a nod to those very first albums, very pagan in the musical way. I think with this little part, very nosy in terms of vocals, we are back in this ambience of like the two first recordings, like very folky and stuff.
Well,
a bit like Fintroll in a way. I don't know to sell it more, but I think it's really kind of a nod to their old ways of doing.
I think it does relate to the shamanistic vibe, which is in the album, but honestly I don't see that so much in the first two records. I mean, particularly not in the first two records. Maybe the themes that they were in the lyrics and so probably, but as for the sound of them, to me it doesn't sound any similar at all.
Probably it's my idea of the mood connecting the two, but every time
maybe it's my inability to connect them.
No. I have a very bad memory, so. But I think every time I'm listening to that part, it always got me thinking of the early years of Moonsorrow and Fintroll in a way also, with this shamanic part.
I think more because of the accordion, because the accordion does.
There is the accordion behind also.
Yeah, so that part sounds a bit Sudanuni-ish or Voimastage. So maybe that is the thing, not so much the vocals.
I do think that there is an effort on all of their albums to include at least like one section that has a lot of folk instruments, because I feel like, I mean, I think that's like in the Varjoina album, there is on, I think the first track, just like a whole section of like, all right, let's throw in a bunch of folk instruments right now because we're still this band. I think it feels kind of like a calling card, but yeah, I think there's I think the first song overall has more folk instrument driven stuff, but this song is more synth driven, and there's parts like that accordion I think is a real accordion, but then right around like 7:46, as we start transitioning into the next section, there's the we do transition, and I think that's just synth. I don't think that's a real instrument. And
yeah, probably. Yeah. Sounds like that. Yeah.
And just just in the section leading up to that, right? It's very big and very reverby, and everything's sort of, I mean, I don't want to use the word shoegaze, but everything's sort of like milky and cloudy and bleeding into each other. And the is it synth? Is it distorted guitars? Maybe it's both, but it's not like a like chun 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 chun, like you don't hear like the hits. It's very washy, like fast, but without like you don't really hear the individual strums. It just sort of is saturation, and all of that comes in really nice.
Sound.
They don't really do that previously on previous albums, maybe a little bit on the last song. But this is their first time really trying this, and I don't think they do it much later either, where the guitars aren't really playing riffs. They're just sort of holding a chord the way a synth would hold it, but with distortion and that kind of saturation in it. Though, also, I don't know if we want to talk about that for a second, but I noticed that I was wrong about when the time signature transitions. It transitions right on that synth part. The yeah. Now we're in 6, or however you want to count it, right? But it's a small. We've kind of gotten small again on Abel's like up and down chart. We've gone a little bit lower, so it's not that hard a transition. If you're trying to keep climbing up and suddenly you change time signature, it's very noticeable. There you kind of barely notice it. So then by the time that section builds up to its climax with the choir part, you're sort of already used to that time signature, but it's still fresh in a way. I don't know. Nothing is like hitting so heavy that you're like nodding your head to it and feeling that temperature yet. And so you're kind of just sitting back, kind of floating around. And then when it gets to this, climax of that section, and I guess that's the best way of describing it, because the part right before that transition is sort of like the climax of the earlier section, and it sort of is like acts, like in a play or like a movie. You know, there's sections that transition in and out, but they each kind of have their own arc to them. That takes us to the choir section. It's my favorite Moonsorrow choir. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
If you want to laugh a bit, I had this idea this morning. So I was really listening to the song and to this choir, and there is this very small part. Sorry for my singing in advance, but da 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 da. And I was like in the car. Wait, that's not Moonsorrow. That's Atlantean Codex.
Guarding the innermost light.
Da, 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 da. And I just checked. This album, Vides Lucu, is from the same year that the beginning of Atlantean Codex in Germany. So my theory is Atlantean Codex is the new Moonsorrow.
What is Atlantean Codex?
Oh, it's a
very good band.
An heavy metal band from Germany. The last album is amazing.
It's more like Epic Doom kind of thing, no?
Which one?
Yeah, it began like this kind of mix between heavy metal and doom with an epic
Epic feel
outcome,
to it, yeah.
feel, taste. I don't know. And we saw them in September in France, in south of France, and it was just pure epic heavy metal, different than Manila Road, but very epic. With the probably we could have the same like way of thinking or arguing about all the solos and guitars part and stuff than Moonsorrow, because they are really great and prolific. But I have to send the last album to Sasan, The Course of Empire. It's a treat. It's really a treat.
The Course of Empire, we can talk about for a long time. It's a romantic era paintings, which we've talked about in relation to Moonsorrow before.
Yes, we have.
So my theory was true.
So absolutely, your theory was totally right. One of the things to me about this choir that makes it special is that it's not like I don't know how to describe it. It's not tough. It's not victorious. It's not like Vikings singing about, you know, sometimes I'll read like a review of this album and then people will be like, and it has Viking choirs. And this doesn't sound like Vikings at all, right? It's not like, it's not like an Ensiferum sort of like, we will, I don't know, burn their houses or whatever an Ensiferum song is about. It also like it's a beautiful melody, but it's not like, I don't know, something about it to me isn't something that you would want to sing along to. It feels, maybe it's a reverb and the way it's kind of washed out too, is it feels like a choir of, I imagine like God's giving judgment, you know, like it feels like narration, if that makes sense. Like it's not something that, if you're imagining the song from the perspective of, let's say, Ville, or like that sort of singing is what you're like identifying with, it feels like the choir is sort of another set of characters, or like a Greek choir would have been, right? Like narrating from a third person perspective, like what is going on. And I don't remember the lyrics for this part, and that's where Finnish Alexi is missed right now. But I wonder if also like the language reflects that, whether it's like from a totally different perspective.
Let's find out about the lyrics. Okay, I found them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th paragraph. Let's see the translation. Splinter your axes against the rocks. Hang your heads and kneel. Shed your skin to reveal your flesh. Wallow in shame to sacrifice your kin. That sounds a bit Viking-y.
Well, it sounds Viking-y, but a couple things. One, it is a different perspective, right? Like if you look at the lyrics up to that, it is sort of third person, right? It's not me, it's not our, it's sort of like clay from the earth, ash from the sky. No one has looked. Oh, it says at us from above. But then when we go into splinter your axes against the rocks, that's
this is
a second
imperative.
person. Right. So this is sort of like an outside kind of like speaking to that other perspective. I also realized just how much Moonsorrow I rip off when I write lyrics, which it's not on purpose. But yeah, like you were reading those lyrics and I was like, I paraphrased that more or less. But it's fucking sick. It's great. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like it's a very like, I don't know if sad is the word for it, right? It's not like sick puppy, but it is like this sort of right. It's this sort of a sort of misery, sort of like I don't know, suffering, right?
You mentioned you mentioned the Greek choir, and I have to agree that it's like it sounds. So actually, even the lyrics now, having read the lyrics, they don't match so well with the mood of the part, musically speaking, because it does sound like the choir telling, and now the hero is in trouble and is going to die or something like this. So as you say, it sounds melancholic or suffering.
Yeah.
And then now that you mentioned the Greek thing, yeah, I totally imagine the choir explaining how now the hero is in a terrible situation and
yeah,
life is miserable.
I don't know that I picture it exactly like a plot, like it's paraphrasing what's happening to the hero, but I think it's sort of like speaking from an objective. It's kind of like I don't know, if you imagine like a Greek choir and the Greek choir like knows the truth about things, right? I kind of imagine like the lyrics are this perspective, and then this choir part is sort of the curtains being pulled back, and you know the life or the gods or whatever it is are being like, no, this is the suffering. It like everything's suffering, like all of this is just here to cause you pain, like there's no point, or whatever the vibe is, right? I don't know that it's more so much like, and then our hero went and did this. I think it's more of the like an outside authority on what's going on, sort of explaining the hopelessness or the suffering of just this situation that is in the plot, the story, or whatever of the song. But I think also just sort of, you know, like the way like Magua writes lyrics, you know, like the great truth is there isn't one, and it only gets worse since that conclusion, you know, like stuff like yeah, just sort of, instead of it being about like, and then the Viking went to the hill, like it like, instead of it being about like a plot, more about like that philosophy, that like conclusion about life.
Yep, I see what you mean. Yeah, you said that it's your favorite Moonsorrow choir.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's partially because of the build-up that takes to it, that it feels as such a release, because there is a very emotional vocal from Billy, like right before.
Yeah.
One of these super tortured, not the super high. This one is not super high, but it's like really tortured. Get into it, and because of the build-up that we already spoke about, and this is a very big release. It's not only a beautiful melody, of course it is, but also where it is located. Maybe if it was somewhere else, maybe it wouldn't feel so special, perhaps.
Maybe. I think part of it is like take the choir part on Tuleen at the end of that, right? Like that also has a build up. It's different, but something like that is a great choir part, but that feels like Vikings, right? That feels like I want to, or that I want to sing along to that. There's some stuff on Voimasta that also is like these big choir parts you sing along to. This one, I don't really feel like singing along. It's more just like being sung to, you know. I'm more listening to this than I am
for sure. Yeah, completely agree.
The no, I mean, I guess they do change the lyrics to being more like second person, like with your blood they veil the ground, like. So I don't know that it's as cleanly like this perspective, that perspective, but definitely like there is that feeling of this is being directed at you, the listener, and you're not really it's not about making you feel like you're part of the music and you're part of the experience. It's more like you're being sung and played to, if that makes sense. And that's kind of what I think makes the song as emotional an experience for me, because I feel like I'm sitting back and all of this is like talking to me and being played for me, and like about my feelings in like an abstract way. I wonder if you guys relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, completely. It really is. It's hard to fathom in a way and express how it is, because as much as we personally, I really looked forward to talking about this song. It's also probably the hardest one to talk about, because it's such a personal thing that you can't even describe what it means. So I'm really at a loss for words.
For me, it is a bit different. I mean, it's not like the song is speaking to me, but it's like reaching a fusion with the song, like being in a situation in which there is no difference between the sound and the reality you see and you feel. So it is like being different than before listening to the song.
Yeah, I agree mostly on that, actually. That's the same way I feel.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it.
For me, every time I'm listening to this song, I'm listening to the album as a whole in general. And it's always in very not personal moments in the way they are important, but in a way I'm completely alone. Usually I'm in my car. I'm coming back from Bordeaux. It's the night, it's raining and stuff. And it's really a moment where I can think and in a way not think. Like I have when I put the album in my car, I can have this kind of freedom of reflecting on some problems and stuff like that, or just drive very fast like I'm a huge hero / asshole. But so every time I'm really listening to the album as a whole, but for that part with the choir, every time it's the peak. Like I'm at the top either of my rock and rolliness and freedom, or in my thought I found the answer. It's one of those things. And for the New Year's Eve, I went to Paris with my car, and I had another person as a
Passenger.
Yeah, thanks. Obviously. And the first thing she asked me 2 minutes after we left from my city to Paris was to explain to me. It began with death metal, but metal was the bigger picture. Why do I enjoy it and stuff? So of course, 10 minutes later, she was listening to Moonsorrow, and I was like, but you see, there is so much deepness and stuff. And we listened to that song a couple of times on the road, and she actually enjoyed it. She was a philosophy teacher, so we were speaking about nihilism and stuff like that. Of course, I think nihilism is not completely in or out the way I picture this album, but I mean, in the way I feel it. But that was a very nice soundtrack to our philosophical discussion on the road, in a way. It does not speak to me, but I mean, there is this fusion too. I can relate to it every time.
There's a lot of really interesting things you said that I want to talk more about. One of the things that I guess I want to, now's a good a time to ask is, does this album feel nihilistic to you guys? Like, what do you feel? Because for me, yes. For me, it does. For me, it feels like the sort of like collapse of all things, you know? And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that kind of with the ending, but that's sort of like the emotional, philosophical like vibe that I get, is this sort of like all things, like getting ravaged, I guess, for lack of a better word. But yeah, I wonder, Abel, you said not to you. What?
Not at all, because obviously this is a totally personal perspective. It has too many keywords for that, too many melodies for that. It's not doom metal enough, so to say. I could maybe feel that with, I don't know, Sudentunt. Well, okay, that's too fast, but it's quote unquote ugly enough or dirty enough. I don't feel this is so dirty. It has a lot of keyboards and feels too beautiful for that, to me only. Too beautiful for being so negative. I feel much the opposite. Like there is like the silver lining. The cloud is fucking huge and it's going to crush you, but as it crushes you, you still see the silver lining.
But I agree with you, Abel, in a way. And it's funny because I think it's also what makes, for me, this album probably my favorite, and because it's so dark, but so light in a way. It's I'm probably, it's a problem, but I'm always listening to it as a whole, and you love to hear from him, but it's from French Alexis. The first time we discovered the album together, it was like, do you notice the end is the beginning? And we're like, shit, that's amazing. It's such an immersive and great slash painful, not in a way it's painful to hear, it's it throws at you so much emotion. The album is such a journey through those dark, cloudy thoughts and stuff like that. And we really were thinking, and I'm still thinking it, it's kind of a depressive stuff. I don't have to say that, but God knows I don't like French depressive black metal. That thing is shit, in my opinion. But for me, this one is, it's really the, with all the work they put inside and all the transition arrangements, composition work, it's the, I wanted to say it's the beauty of the collapse then rebirth, which is a transition. I'm probably going to write a book or something.
A saga, please.
No, I'm probably being too exaggerating too much, but it was this thing of going really low with beautiful way of saying that, and be reborn at the end. So it was, in a way, very, not really nihilistic in a philosophical way, but very,
it's much more
dark
pagan
stuff. Yeah, very dark all the way, with like beams of light sometimes. So
it's always darkest before dawn.
Yeah, that's I don't have the word in English, but that's lame but true.
Yeah, I mean, everything always seems the most grim just before it gets better, and it's I guess that's maybe the end part. It's just this shiny little, see, something's getting better. And
with my passenger, we talked about philosophical stuff, and it was an opportunity to make her listen to Moonsorrow, to speak about music also. But as we were speaking of nihilism, I probably choose a bad album to picture nihilism. I think it's more like the cycle between dark and light in a way. So it's not a very, the first time I heard it, it was very depressing, but now it's like beautiful. And we were also talking about beauty in art and music, so that was a perfect fit.
That's a really interesting way of describing it. And Mikkel, I think you were talking about this pagan perspective. And I don't remember what song or what album we were talking about, but this is another conversation that I think we had. I think I was talking about something being very, I don't know, for lack of a better word, negative. But here's how I kind of hear it. I hear what Abel is saying in terms of, an apocalyptic, nihilistic song would be uglier, or I don't know, more, uglier, I guess, for lack of a better term. That this is very beautiful. For me, this kind of feels like you're in that situation, and this is sort of like soothing, like when I hear the ending of the song, or this choir or whatever moments are really beautiful, it doesn't feel like a silver lining to me, right? It feels like rubbing the dog's head as it's being put down, right? it feels like soothing and letting out the sadness of that situation, right? I think a lot of metal that talks about like nihilism or the end of things or whatever takes a very like badass approach to it, but it doesn't really speak to like the sad emotional experience of that, I mean, to take a random example, right? Like one perspective on like a city getting completely bombed out in World War II is like Marduk's like Panzer Division album, right? But I'm sure like if you were going through that and like that was, you know, your life and your home and your family, whatever, it wouldn't really sound like baptism by fire to you, you know? And I think like for me it is nihilistic, but it's not making a statement about nihilism. It's not like telling you to feel nihilistic. It's the nihilism sort of just there. Like that's just a fact that you're dealing with, and the album is sort of the emotional experience of that and things coming to an end. And yeah, I don't know. That perspective was really influential on me and is really hard for me to like separate from the album. I don't know that that's how they saw it, and I don't think they would say like that's wrong. I think they would say like it's music and you interpret it however you want, right? But I don't know if that's the perspective they had. But I know that when I wanted to write an album, I basically just took that idea. I was like, it's just like Hävitetty, right? It's kind of about the ending of things and how like that feels to be, you know, sort of being like, hey, I'm gonna get old and sick and die. Like that's not like a badass feeling, you know? And there's a sort of like certain like soothing aspect to the music that I guess is what I would say maybe differently than what I did before. And I think the choir, the ending, like those feel, I don't know, reassuring and soothing, but they don't sound to me like the problem is better. Maybe there is like a rebirth cycle or something like that, but it doesn't feel super optimistic to me. It feels like
not optimistic, hopeful. A bit of a hope, not exactly optimistic that things are gonna go fine, but there is a glimmer of hope somewhere.
Yeah, glimmer of hope.
Not exactly the same as optimistic.
Well, that's actually true. And to support this idea of a glimmer of hope, I just remembered that in the CD, the album cover is the, you know, what is that? A mountain, a volcano, some sort of and there's the black
with
bird,
this raven and stuff.
Yep, and the raven is on the CD, but if you take out the CD, underneath the CD is the same cover but with a white dove instead of a raven. And I think that sort of speaks to the glimmer of hope that you're.
Such a beautiful detail, man.
Yeah.
And for once, I remembered something from a previous episode. You told us, Sasan, that we already talked about those kind of feelings, and I don't remember the song, and I don't remember the episode, but it was a song about a priest dying, and
was it Pimea?
Probably, and like the entire race of Northmen was going to die in battle, and
or maybe that was
Queen.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't have the names again.
Yeah. I remember the conversation. I don't remember the song.
But we
either.
had this conversation and I remember it, which is an amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Considering that was probably 7 years ago that we had that conversation.
Yeah.
None of us
had just like it.
We've been here for over an hour. Well, not over, for about an hour. And we are still at 9 minutes into the song. Just letting you know.
That's the way it always goes.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even though it is one song, it doesn't really matter. It's about a minute, right? Remember how much did you spend in Tuleen? Half an hour? just in the intro for remaster, which is like two
But
melodies.
usually, okay, when
1
you're
minute.
listening to the first song, you're talking about the whole album also.
Right,
I feel
that
like
is
we
true,
talked
yeah.
about a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that is gonna come up. We're gonna go
Yeah, for
quicker.
sure. Yeah. That is right. Always happens. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so we were in Sasan's choir, and then after that, it goes back to a bit low with the folky part, yeah.
Yeah.
And then soon after that, there is some kind of folky keyboards. I think it is a keyboard, not an accordion. Sounds more like a bit too fake for a real accordion. But then there are some keywords that made me think of spacey keyboards. Is that 1020? I wrote it here at 1020. That makes me think of early Jean-Michel Jarre. Like this oxygen.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
Interestingly enough, as I was editing the episode, I realized that exactly the same effect can be heard in the very beginning of the album, in just a synth unit. Thomas,
Yeah,
how much do you know about Jean-Michel Jarre? I believe you know him quite well.
I don't know. I don't know for that comparison. I mean, I was raised with Tangerine Dream and Alan Parsons projects. I actually never listened to Jean-Michel Jarre as a kid.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
I grew up with that. So
thanks,
Yeah.
Mikkel.
Sorry, I was listening to what the section you were describing. Yeah, I mean, I do hear something. There's all sorts of little things even before that. So if you go back to right around like 9:58, like whatever time that section comes in, you can hear there's all the synth and the drums and the bass, right? You can hear acoustic guitars far to the left and right. But I think if you listen down the center, and I can't hear them as well with these headphones as I could with the earbuds I was listening to, you can hear piano also.
Really?
I think so. Around the 10-minute mark.
Yep.
I cannot hear any piano, but maybe because these headphones are pretty crappy.
It's playing like, here, let me listen to it one more time real quick.
It's not like in your face right ahead, because at that time you have this kind of like, not really a climax, but everything's playing together. But there is some.
I hear an acoustic guitar, perhaps. I cannot hear a piano. Doesn't mean it's not there. I just cannot hear it.
If you're gonna make a clip of this, right? Start the clip at around 10 seconds, and then you'll hear like bum bum bum, like it's like dun 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 dun, playing chords.
Where exactly? 10?
So start it at 10 and then listen really carefully around the
10 o'clock, at 10:00.
Right, 10:00, and then listen really carefully around 10:03, 10:04.
The question is if it is actually a piano or keyboard, or just some sort of reverb of some other instrument.
I have an idea that is also going to help. Give me just one more second. I'll give you another timestamp. Okay. That section that we were just talking about, that section repeats again around the 12:15 mark, right? And there's still quiet piano there. And if you listen really carefully, there is almost like a Kivan Kantaya, like horns going on the side, like ra da 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 da. And then there's like plum 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 on the piano. But right before that, if you go to 12:20, you'll hear the piano really clearly because it goes like a hand going across the keyboard.
What the fuck?
See?
Yeah, like and it's there really quietly playing chords earlier in the song. I don't know how many other Moonsorrow songs have piano in them. They've done like a Tuleen or whatever, but this has piano in the song, and you hear really clearly when he does that.
What the fuck?
So, but yeah, so that's kind of like what we were talking about before, where there's so many things kind of layered together. That's what I wanted to point out about that section.
Well done.
Yeah, that burned, I think, 11 minutes of Mikkel's remaining 40 minutes.
That's worth it. Yeah. Or that was weird.
Yeah, the rhythm's also really interesting. Just to keep talking about that, it's this whole kind of section leading to the next climax, which is I don't know, around the 13-minute mark, right? There's the like
yeah.
So that's kind of in 6, right? But different parts of the rhythm, like you can feel it different ways, right? But it's mostly kind of a 6 feel. And then there's parts where it's like and that feels a lot more like 4. But it's kind of the same number of notes. You're just sort of putting the emphasis on different places, because 12 you can go into 2 of 6 or 3 of 4, you know? And so it's one of those areas, we kind of talked about it in Pimea or other stuff, where they kind of, it is in this triplet feel, so they can go back and forth a lot. Later they're going to go into the blast section, which is just straight like 4, and you can't really feel it any other way. And it's kind of interesting how, you know, we're in 6 and then we spend this whole 3-minute section kind of going back and forth between 6 and 4, so that by the time the rhythm is shorter, it just, I mean, it's like a 3-minute rhythm transition. You can think of it that way, right? Where instead of it, if you were in the choir part, the na 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 na, and then you went straight to the you would feel the difference way more, but this whole section kind of erases that difference, which I think is beautiful and something they do really well.
Yeah. What I wrote about this section is increasingly triumphant. I don't know how to say, but increasingly triumphant. I also noted the brass section went done with the keywords that also Francesco used to mention that he likes so much. A bit, as you said, like Imaldenko Punky. And then I wrote, probably everybody's favorite part.
Of the song?
Perhaps, that's what I wrote here.
Really? That's not in my top 5 parts of the song, but I love it. It's just a great song. But yeah, I mean, I love when it gets really big and Vile's like vocals are like more intense, and you have the choir parts coming in. It's kind of like this dialogue. Oh yeah, I think that's beautiful. Any more about this, or do we want to go into the blast section?
Yeah, then I mean that
which is just enslaved, right? That's just Viking Ligerveldi. That's
again,
just,
yeah,
which is sick. I mean, it's great.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
Now, before we continue talking about the blast beat part, I want to say something. You may remember that in the previous episode about Varjo Jenvirta, we mentioned that they had a guest singer, a guest vocalist in the studio. It was Thomas Vananen from Tyrfing. And we even pointed at the section where he was singing. Well, turns out that we were mistaken. Well, I was mistaken because I was the one saying it was there, but it's not. That was Ville, much to his credit, because it's an amazing vocal performance in my opinion in that section. But yeah, I basically asked the band and they told me that the section where Thomas Vananen sings is in Tuleen, ajettu during the blast beat. Specifically this part that you're going to hear now.
I love that blast section and the way the drums come in. Yeah, it's really good.
In general, I know it's not super original that they start with the like guitar doing the fast part alone, and then the drums come in, the blast beat comes in. I know that it's not super original, or even not original at all, but it's something that I like a lot in black metal in general. Whenever that starts, like, yes, give me. Like, yeah, here we go. Here we are again.
Yeah.
It's like Satanic Warmaster, but it instead of blast beats is duka duka. It's exactly the same, just the guitar.
I don't know what you're talking about, but probably agree.
The punk Satanic Warmaster.
Yeah.
But there is something sorry, Sasan. I wanted to mention it a bit earlier, but I forgot. I'm a huge fan of snare drums because I love old school death metal. And on this album, they do not sound how I like, but I love them. It's like it's not that they like punch or something, but I really enjoyed that huge like momentum between before the drummer hit the snare, and you have this huge reverb in old school and putrid death metal, which are my main like styles. And on this one is much shorter, but the reverb is in a way that it just blends so much into the rest of the mix, and you have kind of the feeling, but not too much. It's like you have some pepper sauce, like a very strong stuff, but you're just putting in very nicely in a way it blends and just give more taste to the overall mix. So I really enjoy the drums, the snare, sorry, on all the album, and especially on that part. Love the snare. We'll make that confusion way more times.
I had a friend of mine was visiting, and he was showing me a lot of music he likes. He listens to a lot of, I don't know, jazz, and he was showing me this album of something of a Japanese genre called city pop. And anyway, a lot of what he was showing me made me kind of realize like how quiet a lot of genres of music are. And I think what makes me feel the quietness is how loud the drums are, right? When you think about like how hard the drummer is hitting things, usually in not big band jazz, but in like smaller jazz or like pop or reggae or something like that, like the drums are very quiet. And when the drums are quiet, I don't know, there's more dynamics and more like more texture and stuff. And I think with metal, like the drums are very loud. Like it doesn't matter if it's like Motorhead or Metallica or like Necrophagus, like the drums like are being hit hard and they feel loud, you know? And so it kind of feels like you're kind of at a ceiling the whole time. But one of the things about this album, which might speak to what Tomas is saying, is the drums don't feel that loud. Maybe it's where they are in the mix. Maybe it's like how many things are on top of them or how spacey it sounds. It sounds like they're being hit hard, but they kind of sound far away, you know? And it just feels like there's so much room for all of these sounds to stack on top of them. Especially with the part where like the da-da-na, da-da-na, and there's all sorts of singing and the choirs and everything. Like there's and that kind of makes it, even though you're listening to it at the same volume that you would listen to a lounge song, like it just feels so much louder because there's this thing being played really loudly and then so much stuff on top of it that I think your brain just makes it feel very epic and large.
I have to agree completely. If I can make this very, very obnoxious, like a very silly comparison between old school French death metal scene right now and the sound of the drums on Moonsorrow on Vides Luku, is the fact that all of my friends drummers in bands like Cadaveric Fumes, Skeletal, Necro Wretch, all of that wonderful French scene, live they hit so hard, and you feel it while singing them live. But on a record, they hit as hard as live, but with the reverb and the mix stuff, you have all the punch and the violence, but on the back foot, like not quiet. It's just a little bit more behind, and so you have this. We enjoy calling them cave death metal, and you have that more of the reverb than the direct sound, and because of the guitars and bass and vocals are using that kind of foggy space of the reverb to act. When you have this punch of the snare, like paf, and this huge space creating immediately, and all the other elements engulfing in it to take their place in the mix, that creates that's a very stupid sentence, but very lovely experience.
Yeah.
because they are speaking about space, death, philosophy, and stuff like that. And I think for this album, it's kind of the same. Like I think Marco just hit as hard as he always hit, but the mixing work and how it's placed and how much reverb and stuff like that, it sounds great and it's well placed, and you have the feeling of a good drums with this kind of spacey and old school way of sounding, which I love. So great.
Yeah.
Drums, not snares this time. But I have to agree with you completely on that one, Sasan.
Abel was saying that the way that the blast beat comes in isn't the most unique way for it to come in. You know, you have they even do it on the Hävitetty album with the, you know, yeah, right, and they do the same thing. Both really good blasts, but one thing that this blast beat does that I love, and I don't know where they got it from. I don't know if they came up with it, if they heard somebody else do it. I ripped it off from them directly, but they have the blast, and that guitar part keeps going, but then the drum beat changes, and then these synths and choirs like come in on top of it, and the feeling completely changes, even though it's the same, you know, it keeps the same melody on top of it, but, you know, we go into the
and that is done so smoothly that often I don't realize, and then there is a moment when the blast beat comes back, and
yeah,
I sometimes think, oh wait, this is a blast beat starting. When did it stop?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it
completely.
stopped.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's really, that's, go ahead.
This every time, you know, there is a part with a lot of drums, with protagonism from drums, I always think, man, Marco is a fucking beast. I know we spoke about this already.
Yeah.
But the way he does his transitions and these ornaments here and there, and I don't know, it's brilliant. Brilliant how he seems to improvise, not really improvising, but yeah, doing exactly what fits here. And okay, now I have a bit of space for something. I do this. Perfect.
That's my favorite Marco drumming bit ever. Like the reason Marco is one of my favorite drummers ever is this section. It's that blast and how the beat changes under it, but also that section under that is so weird. It's in 6. Like is it in 6 even? No, it's in 4 or like 8, but it goes for 8. So you're thinking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like the fill usually comes at the end of when you're counting, right? It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4. You know, like. It's a very weird. It's not where you expect the giant fill to come in, and it feels very. It stands out a lot more. It breaks up the feeling of it. It feels huge.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
Sasan wants me to point out that he was indirectly influenced by this song, and specifically this part, when he wrote his own song Ending 4 for his band Antimony.
I got a chance to talk to Marco one time at a show, their first show in the US, and he was just like up by where I was standing and trying to get some food. And I was like, I don't know, 17 and super nervous. And I was like, hello, I'm a very big fan of Moonsorrow. And he was like, oh, that's great. And I was like, the drum fills on Tuleen, ajettu in that section are my favorite. It's my favorite drumming ever. And I think he said something like, oh, wow, thank you. Do you know how I can order some food here? And I was like, yeah, you can get the quesadilla. It's pretty good. I don't know if you've ever had a quesadilla because you're from Finland. But yeah, get the quesadilla. It's pretty good.
Oh, man.
Oh, my
But
God.
yeah, but that section, I think, is just such good taste in drumming. That it's not something that is really difficult to do, but I just feel like I've heard a million songs with a million blast beats, and I haven't heard that anywhere else.
Yeah, and in the middle of it all, while all of this is happening, Henry appears shouting his shouty stuff, followed by some even more drum fills and the keyboard doing and the blast beat comes back.
Yeah.
It's like, it's amazing. How can it have so much packed in, not feel too much? Amazing, man.
Yeah.
That is fucking
And
incredible.
the blast is really long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's as long as like a 1349 song. It's like you know, like it's as long as I don't know,
Well,
how long is the
probably
Marduk
it's-
song?
Probably it feels long because of those parts which are not exactly blast beat, but have the same melody. So maybe that is why it feels so
Oh,
long. It is long.
yeah.
It is long, but not. I think the one in Carhun Quincy is longer. Maybe I'm
Maybe.
mistaken.
But I think yeah, I think they do break it up, right? But I think the whole section where you do the blast, you go somewhere, you don't realize it's not a blast beat anymore, and then the blast beat comes back, and you're like, how are we back? I didn't realize we ever left. I think from beginning to end, that whole section's got to be something like 3 minutes, and that's massive. And I think they can do that because the song is so big, and that they've worked up to this moment for so long that it doesn't feel, you know, if that was, and that's kind of, I guess, what I mean when I was saying that's a really weird place to start the second side of the vinyl. Because if you're just starting there, I don't know if you can go 3 minutes from there. But having built up to it, I think it makes a lot of sense.
And there is this part, we transition to the blast beats to a more slowly rhythm. And again, I'm sorry if I'm like focusing on that point, but the transition is amazing and the drum sounds amazing on that moment where the speed is going down right away, and that's done very nicely.
At around that section that Tomas is talking about, like, I don't know, around the 16-minute mark, 16-minute 10, things are slowing down a little bit more.
Before we get there, I want to mention one thing. That is,
oh yeah,
so still blast beat, but there is a different riff, which is, and there Billy shouts "assassin," which is the first word in Tameikun in Talvi. And it sounds, I don't know, I always, maybe because it's one of the very few words that I recognize in Moonsorrow songs, but because that is one is written on the CD, on the demo CD side, and and it's the beginning of the Taistelu Pohjolasta song.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's also in a prominent, well, not so prominent, but he says, as I say in that word, a bit isolated and very clearly hearable. I always notice it. It's even the 3-syllable word that I can sing along to in this this song. As I say, that's all.
Yeah, I see the part you're talking about. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I don't speak Finnish, so anytime like I recognize a word, I'm like, is that a specific reference? But it's probably just a word, you know? like Pimea means dark. I'm sure they talk about darkness. It's a metal band, you know? like they probably say like 900 times. But yeah. Well, so later on after that section, when things are starting to slow down a little, or you don't have all these choirs and everything's going full blast, there's still an incredible amount of instruments. If you just like listen to that, like at around 1610 for like 5 seconds, there's clean guitars, there's distorted guitars, there's little synth stuff playing all over. And it's just incredible how much is happening and how it can still feel not super big. And that there's
and there are these keyboards doing this magical sounding.
Yeah, that's a lot of people call ear candy. You know, just like little things for your ear to pick up on your 30th time listening to it.
It's probably a studio edition. I mean, I don't think he planned to do that during the composition of the song.
Mm-hmm.
Hell knows. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I suppose lots of these little details probably come at the time of, I don't know, mixing even maybe, or recording or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. If Henry brought all that to the table, or if it's like it's missing just a little bit, you know. And that was my main point. And now that we know what his state of mind was when he was creating this, how do you go from just trying to funnel all your emotions out to at least something to begin with, to actually end up being like, okay, this just needs the and that's it. No, nothing else needs to be added on this part, then it's perfect. I mean, I would have to think about maybe like the other Finnish band Kalman Kantaja, which releases like a new album every second week. This guy is so fucking depressed all the time, and he just funnels it out to music consistently. Like every 3 weeks or 2 weeks, there's a new album out from him. And I think he reaches probably a point and it's like, that's enough for now. I don't need to add anything else here. Where this seems to be like something that's been in the end of a long process and just keeps adding a little bit. Oh, this little bit here, just a little bit there. I don't know.
Man, fucking amount of albums. This is incredible.
Yeah. And most of what he makes is super good, but I could imagine that he gets to a point where it feels like there's nothing gained in trying to squeeze in more stuff on this track, where when we see all these layers popping up, it seems like this is not something that just popped up in 2 weeks. This is something that's been really, really worked on for a long time, even after the demos were basically finished.
Yes, it'll be really interesting to ask someone in the band especially with, you know, this era of the band that we're listening to now, where the music is so much more complex. There's so much more happening. I mean, do you guys remember, like, we were listening to like Kiven Kanteya, and there's like one guitar riff, and every, like, the keyboard's playing the guitar riff and the bass is playing the guitar riff, and every, you know, like, and the level we're at now where we're having to like dig to hear, like, oh, there's a completely different melody going on here with this instrument. I mean, it's a huge progression in 3 years time, probably, right? This is this would have been 2000. Right. Well, I guess for Hävitetty would have been 3 years. This is 2007, so this would have been like 5 years later. But
this was recorded in 2006, and Kiven Kanteya was recorded in 2002.
Yeah. So
Kiven Kanteya recording is 4 years only.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and Kiven Kanteya is, you know, complex. It's not this level though. I mean, I think it's a lot easier to hear the different elements of what's going on in Kiven Kanteya.
Maybe so, not subtracting from what you're saying, because I agree that there is each album there is more and more. Well, especially this one. But we are saying that it's so hard to hear and everything, and maybe it is partially because of the production. I mean, if the production was clearer and wider dynamic range, maybe there is still a lot of stuff. It's still many things for sure, but maybe it could be easier to find them, like the piano a bit more clear, or could be easier to hear things. And sorry for not letting you speak yet, but I remember Marco mentioning. We asked him about. I don't know if anyway, we were talking about this album, and then the vinyl version came up because that was remastered, as you know, and he said, yeah, and actually listening to that version, I discovered new things that I never realized were there. So, you know, it's the dynamic range here is 4. It's the lowest in any Moonsorrow album. It's really, really crashed together, especially for an album with so many little things, because okay, Cult of Fire also reduced them to the minimum, but it's just, you know, I think one guitar, maybe 2, bass, drums, and guys screaming, but not 100 things like here. So
the coolest thing was I just had my my new drum kit, my own custom set from Kumu. So that was the first studio session I got to use that, and pretty mixed feelings towards the sound. And I'm not talking about the drum sound, but the overall sound, because it got so compressed, too much compressed. And listening to that sort of music with half an hour songs, it needs air, it needs to breathe, and that sound doesn't breathe. And it is something that I cannot listen to through. It goes in bits, but for me it's hard to listen to that material. I think the sound got a bit better on the vinyl box, and if I'm not completely insane, I started hearing new things on that album. You know, some small stuff, some bells, or I don't know, some cling here and there, or some other instruments. I cannot tell what it is. I cannot say the certain parts or moments. And I was not stoned.
In some way there are trends in production, mixing, and there are also trends in mastering. For example, the whole loudness war thing, which started to really badly creep in the mid-2000s. And also, for example, Moonsorrow's Hävitetty was a great part of it. Though I have nothing but absolutely super extremities of good words towards Mika Jussila. Even he had this moment at some point that he was squashing every single album he did, like everybody else was doing, because it was part of the game. First everyone mixed the album with triggers, and then later they went to master, and it was squeezed so badly that I really find it very annoying to listen to albums produced at that time. The records sound so weird and so exhausting to listen when the records are ending, you're pouring sweat and you feel like you've run a marathon when you listen to an album like Hävitetty, for example, which is squashed so bad it's amazing how loud it can sound. Then again, I still say that with that material of music and that mix, the squashing is absolutely perfect way to make it even more oppressing sounding.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. I think there is a lot of those little details aren't like important melodies, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like, I think a lot of things are being right. I think a lot of things are being lost or like harder to hear. But I also think that that those things are still just not present in the earlier albums, right? I don't think like I don't think like Kiven Kantaya is doing this amount of things and you can hear it so it sounds simpler. I think there is just more stuff.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah,
there is more for sure.
Yeah. The next few sections kind of all, I feel like they're just building so much momentum and growing so much that it all feels like one vibe to me. It's really hard for me to separate out anything. And I think by the time that comes on and I'm listening to the album, I'm sort of completely spacing out at like by the time the blast is over and not really thinking about anything specifically and just sort of getting carried through with the music. But there are a couple little interesting moments that do stand out to me, like the rock organ. I don't know if we are like skipping too far ahead, but there is a organ sound which we also don't hear that often. Abel's looking at me like he's not sure which part I'm talking about, but
that's correct.
Okay, give me one.
It's
give me 1 second.
I like this riff that dun 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 dun. It's very Kiven Kantaya as well. It's true that this part is not maybe not as emotional as many others in the song, so it's easier to, but it's a rest in a way. Not that it's more silent or anything, but you can afford to focus a bit less, not so intense in terms of so many elements, so many whatever, perhaps.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, but super ugly.
Okay, yeah, I know. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay, let's just go with the ugly audio for a minute while I get this fixed. But the bass, when everything cuts out and we get that, just that bass riff.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
Actually, that's from the other song.
That's really great. It sounds amazing. Viola's bass playing is beautiful, but also the tone of that bass and just where that comes in, and we don't really get another like here's just the bass moment in Moonsorrow. That doesn't happen often, and I love that moment. Let me get this fixed. I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, guys. I think I have to go now.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Sorry about that. Is this better?
Yeah. That's good again.
Yeah.
Well, there's only like 3 things I think I want to talk about on the album, and then Abel, whatever closing questions you have. So the 3 things I guess left to talk about before the outro for me are that little bass section I think is beautiful. I really like the kind of like like the wow 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 wow, like the like it's a kind of cheesy, but by that point, like I feel like I'm sold, right? Whatever you want to do, you can start playing cowbell. Like I'm listening, like I'm fully bought in.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
And this is also from the other song.
And yeah, there's this organ, which is what I was looking for when I lost the okay, give me 1 second and I'll tell you where it is. 1 second. Oh my god, it's just the longest song in the world. Around 2020, there's the vocals, and then underneath that you hear this organ going like,
yeah, that's right. The Uriah Heep / Deep Purple.
Yes.
This is a thing I've never known before. It's called easy living. This is a everything. I can drive the power, big fat tires and everything. I love it, and I need it. I feel it. Yeah, it's a wild king. All right, hold tight. I'm always
worth the last 20 minutes of me trying to pull that up. But yeah, I think there's just at this point it just feels like they're just it sounds very confident, I guess. Like everything is such a left field thing on this album that they hadn't done before, but it just feels like they're like organ, piano, clean guitar, like it just seems like they have such a vision of what they want this to sound like, and they're not like hesitating. It's very like proggy, like it has those space synths that you were talking about, and that. Yeah, Tomas.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to say at least we don't have any cowbell, but
I like the cowbell on Karun Kinsu.
I love the cowbell in Karun Kinsu.
It could have been probably a bit out of place for.
It would have been out of place here.
Yeah, like okay, we are dark and nihilistic, but we love cowbells.
There was a friend of mine went to school for music composition at like a big music conservatory that's hard to get into, and he was just showing metal songs, mostly death metal and stuff, to other composition majors there, and he ended up showing them Vrisaket. He was like, what Moonsorrow do you recommend? I was like, start with Vrisaket. And they liked it, and they're like, okay, what next? And I was like, check out, Hävitetty. And I guess the guy he was showing it to thought that this album sounds a lot less like intense or metal than the other one. He said that it sounded almost like power metal to him, which this was like a guy that doesn't know very much about metal, but I guess maybe it's all the synths, maybe like, I don't know what it is. Like to me, this is the like much harder to get into album, and it's a lot more demanding, and it's a lot more emotionally intense. But this guy was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It sounded like just power metal. Like, what? The only other thing that I really want to talk about is I think Ville's vocals at the last section of the song are...
Yeah, before that, I would like to mention pretty direct section, not very long, but it's like around 19. That this super low growl.
Yeah.
And then at the same time we have like a duet, I guess, or two voices at the same time.
Yeah.
One is clean and one is very is growling.
Both Ville,
And then-
right?
I suppose it's both. But it's like a bit unexpectedly dark and low and everything, because the song hadn't been like this for the rest of the song, I guess. And if you told me about nihilism and the song was mostly like this, then maybe I would agree a bit more. But this,
I mean, what about the first main guitar part? The da-gung-ga-ga-na-na, da-gung-ga-ga-na-ga-na. I feel like that is a similar vibe. I mean, it's even calling back to that. Instead of being ga-gung-ga-ga-na-na, it's ga-gung-ga-ga-na. It's the same motif coming back.
It is, but
yeah, it is heavier, you know, and it's
heavier.
lower. Yeah.
It's such a pity. It's impossible to. This is an audio podcast, but this is impossible to express this better than with this
It's
gesture.
like you're just pushing down on something really
Pushing
hard.
down on something and inflating your what is this?
Cheeks.
You're inflating your cheeks and going down. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Villa's vocals in that last section are so fucking good. I mean, I think it's the best shit ever.
Yeah, it's his tortured voice.
Yeah, I think it sounds.
I mean, after what I mentioned, then like at 21, I think this is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, his vocals on the newest album sound really, really good. I don't think he's, as far as like the presentation and the drama and the feeling or whatever, I think this is my favorite metal vocals ever. My favorite vocals ever. You know, it's just really conveying so much emotion. I think it's just so beautifully done.
I think for Ville's vocal part on the song and the entire album, I agree. It's probably my favorite Moonsorrow album. There is just one song, I think, one Moonsorrow song, I think, for me, that conveys even more sadness and feelings and like this kind of very raw texture. It's Uto, but it's for another episode.
I was thinking
this one.
And the last song, Kjole den Ma, that also has a very like emotional Ville on it. But
it's Variona.
The name Variona, the last one. That's correct. But Kjole den Ma is the last song.
You're right. There's just something that's very emotional. It's a little bit different in terms of the technique and the style. As far as like the whatever we call it, right? Whatever Abel you called it, the like tortured like as far as that, I think this is the best it has ever sounded. And you know, that's not originally just a Ville thing. it's other black metal
course.
bands have done, but I think that's the best that thing has ever sounded.
And besides, because he does it very well, but especially he saves it for very few very emotive moments. He doesn't do it all the time. He doesn't do it half of the time or in lots of sections. It's just very few selected. If you listen to, do you know Helheim from Norway? Well, I really like them.
I know of them.
The first album, and I think also the second, are hard for me to listen to because the vocals are like that from beginning to end. All the time. It's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, give me the third album already. When he starts doing a bit more normal. But when you use that resource on specific, well, it's like, I don't know, the cherry on the cake. If you give me a bucket of cherries, after 3, I don't want any more cherries. But if you have the cake with 1 cherry on it, that's what's perfect.
Yeah. I think the last set of lyrics here are just so beautiful. And to me, like, what really sells the nihilism of it is this is how it ends, to emptiness, to oblivion, and none will ever return. Like, to me, like, yeah, that's not like a silver lining. It's not really, I mean, I know the visual on the album has that little like hope thing, but I don't know. To me, I don't know if it's hope or if it's just taking in the feelings and even the beauty of things as they're ending or whatever. I don't know. It seems very nihilistic to me. Also, I directly ripped off those lyrics in my album. There is a line where I say, "This is how everything ends and no one will ever return." But I figured, like, who's going to catch the translation of a Moonsorrow line?
Well, if you announce it on a Moonsorrow podcast, then maybe.
Yeah, you're right. Both of the people who watch this episode will now know my horrible secret. But is there anything we want to talk about before the outro?
I think we said...
I will only express my agreement with you that in the lyrics, there is no silver lining. In the lyrics, everything is over. And that's it.
Yeah. The outro is so beautiful. It's so good. It's the best Moonsorrow thing ever. It's my favorite like moment in music. If I had to like pick like what like show one thing in music that you think is like the best shit, I think to me that moment, and maybe it's hard to, maybe it doesn't have the same effect if you didn't have the 23 minutes leading up to it. But the super washed out guitars kind of setting and the clean guitars coming in over the snare fills.
This like this Marshall.
Yeah. And the way the toms boom in the gum 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 gum.
I have a funny story with that. I was doing a sound design and mix study, and we were listening to music with a friend, and she was like, all those bands you make me listen, they all have this kind of fade out. It's lame. Why can't they do the end of the song properly? And we had a real argument like, are you insane? There is so much work into this fade in the end. Of course, when you finish a song by cutting it like a butcher, you're lazy. There is so much happening in those minutes, and we had a pretty tough argument, but I think I was right, and this song proves it. It's like,
yeah, I think maybe that's exactly what gives it the aesthetic, right? I feel like if it ended with all the instruments kind of playing a thing and then stopping, it feels like a choice to end things there, like to stop.
Yeah,
but this song. Right, but this specifically feels like fading away, like the force of something is leaving, right? And that it's not its choice to stop, but it's ending, you know. I think that conveys the themes a lot more than if all of the instruments went like down, now, now, down. Like I think, or like the way it ends, it does end, right? It ends right before that outro comes in.
See, which is where they finished it in the concerts. They ended there, and when you hear it, so that is an end, but maybe I don't know how in music theory they say that there is this resting chord or this I don't know how to call it, but if you have a melody, then you need to end with this chord, which is the resting chord, like where you rest.
Yeah,
something like this.
I forget the term for it, but yes.
Well, but even I mean, this is a kind of thing that firstly, I almost don't know any music theory, just very very little. But since I was a child, I think it's something you feel. I mean,
yes.
To me, learning about that was giving it a name. But if you make a melody in your head, or you hear a melody and only one note is missing, you know what note is going to be.
Yeah.
And ending the song where they finished it at concerts, it works, but in a way it seems like, so after these 25 minutes, you leave me here. I need something more, finish it better, round it up. Maybe the whole outro is not necessary. I mean, in the song is super beautiful, but maybe it's not indispensable to end the song in a way that it ends.
Yeah,
but
it's kind
I
of
think
like
that if you remove the outro, you need something else, even if it's very short, even if it's 10 more seconds, or you need something else to finish it there.
kind of like if the happy birthday song ended with happy birthday to okay, our next song, you know, like you like, okay, great. We can breathe again, you know? Yeah, that whole last section is so beautiful with everything that comes in. I mean, like Mikkel was saying, like you can't really find a lot of words to describe something past a certain level. And this is something that like I have a very hard time examining this or like being like, it's in this time signature and here's the instruments. Like it's just, I don't know. I feel like it does what Moonsorrow is trying to do, which is just to turn sounds into emotions. And it's hard to hear the sounds at that point. It's just, you're just sort of hearing the emotions. And I think it's, for me, very affecting and very powerful. And yeah, I feel like if I think my emotional relationship to the song is, you know, the tension and the anger and violence and the sadness kind of gives me a lot of like space to, I'm not really thinking about whatever problem I have or whatever personal issue it is consciously, but it's giving me the space to like have those feelings. And then that whole last section feels like such a catharsis. You know, it's exhaling and letting all of that out, and it's sad, but it's like leaving, you know, it's very peaceful, and
It's a silver lining.
it may be, but it's catharsis, it's the release of all of that tension. And I don't know that it's sort of like, I don't know if for me it's the feeling that everything's okay, but it's just sort of like the like all of that got out, you know?
Mhm.
Like I don't know. I don't know what Henry
Now you're dead and suffering is over.
But not even like metaphorically like that. What I mean is, like, I imagine Henry or whoever, right? Like going through a tough time, having all of this stuff on their chest, and then by the time you get to the end of the song or the end of the album, you're just not holding on to it anymore. You know, like now it's out, and there's like a relief that comes from that, even if I don't know that even though nothing's really different, you're not like holding that in anymore. And that's what the end of the song kind of feels like to me. It just feels like such a exhale and
letting
release.
go.
Yeah.
What I wrote here. So when I write these things, I don't put much thought into it. I write as it feels in the moment, and then I don't modify it. And what I wrote here is, okay, so there is the quieter part, and the band comes again, and then super beautiful moments follow. And in 2340, the most beautiful melody in the world begins, like which lasts already until the end, with Marco's mastery and an incredible bass line.
Oh, the do 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 weedle do weedle do weedle do weedle do do.
Yeah,
the bass
it does,
line.
and then goes up, and
yeah,
it doesn't do exactly the same. Doesn't do exactly the same as the keyboard. What is that even? This is a keyboard, or what is it?
Well, it's synth. I think it's like fake violin. The
Yeah, that. So, but and the bass does differently. Goes up and goes down, and
boo doo 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 doo. Yeah, it's really good.
Wonderful. I mean, this is the kind of thing that makes you realize that bass can have, bass is often neglected or forgotten about, but if you use it properly, you can do wonders with it.
Yeah.
And not talking about a bass solo or anything. No, integrate it in the rest, but make it super beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe this is partially why. Well, I have told 100 times that this was my first Moonsorrow album, and it left me really impressed. And maybe this ending is part of the reason. I always give a lot of importance to how an album ends.
Mm-hmm.
An album can be very good, but if the ending is not satisfying, it feels like something is missing. if an album, maybe let's say, okay, if to be good, it has to be good as a whole. But if something is not a bit less, a bit towards mediocre, around the middle, has some better parts and worse parts, but the ending is really good, it feels satisfying. It feels like, all right, I went through some parts which didn't say much to me, but at least it was worth the wait. It was worth getting here. And of course, if everything is very good and the ending is brilliant, then that is, the album ends and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
This was amazing. This was amazing. No matter if you didn't like some sections in the middle or something. Again, of course, cannot be something extreme, something super terrible. But if everything was good and the ending is brilliant, then you're good.
You
And
feel like you can stop listening to music for a bit.
yes, exactly. There is
Right?
nothing that I don't need to put anything else immediately. It's like, wait, I need my moment.
I
of
need
peace.
silence now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
To digest this. Not anything that will come now will only ruin it. So pay some respect.
Yeah.
I have to disagree a bit with that because for me, when I listen to the whole album in my car, there is 2 options left. I mean 3. If I arrive at my place, I won't be listening more music in my car. But 1, I put Summoning. 2, I put Judas Priest.
Really? Judas
This is
Priest
a-
after
This
this?
is a palate
I'm on-
cleanser?
And I'm on a real way to greatness.
Judas Priest, man, I love Judas Priest. But after this, man,
I would have to
Yeah.
completely change the vibe. So maybe it's not Judas Priest. Maybe it's like, for me, maybe it's like Biggie Smalls. But it can't be like similar. Like it has to be just like, whew, got that off my chest. Like what else is up? What else can we talk about?
Hear me out. You listen to Vides Luku, you have all those feelings, you finish on that beautiful note. You just have to listen to Turbo Lover or Reckless to keep on going fast on the highway. I don't know.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
interestingly enough, this summer I attended a festival in Hungary called Rock Marathon, and there I saw an amazing Judas Priest concert, followed 10 minutes later by Moonsorrow. It felt super strange waiting for Moonsorrow to come out in front of the stage, and I was still like living after midnight in my head, and I wanted more big choruses and sing-alongs and to keep jumping. It was very weird emotional impasse. But well, honestly, that disappeared about a minute into the concert. I guess the same would have happened the other way around. But yeah, those few minutes were like, really? Do I come from this and am I waiting for this?
Tin 10 ton. Editing done.
What summoning would you listen to after this?
Probably my favorite one, Stronghold, or not the last one, the one before.
Oathbound?
Not Outbound, the one after.
Old Morning's Dawn.
All Morning's Dawn. This one is
Fascinating. Yeah, I don't know. Not me, but I'll try it sometime.
After Vides Luku, I put some Hamferd albums.
Some what albums?
Hamferd. It is a
I'm not
band from the Faroe Islands. They play doom death.
Oh.
Yeah, do you know Barren Earth, the singer in the last 2
Yeah.
albums? The singer came from Hamford originally, and I think he's still
And
in
they
the band.
played together with Moonsorrow in the same tour. I saw
2011.
them in the
Yep.
same venue, yeah.
Saw them, didn't pay any attention to them because
sure
I was
they're
too
great.
excited. It was my first Moonsorrow show. They were playing with Grimfall, who I also loved, and I knew nothing about Hamford, so could be better than the other 2 combined. I wasn't. They were not in my head. They existed. I
Yeah.
existed here. We were not in the same room.
and
Yeah.
also they have a huge flow. They are not Judas Priest, and a lot of bands are not Judas Priest. Be aware of
Yeah.
that.
Many of them are not just as Priest. Yeah.
What else do we want to talk about with this album?
Do
It
we
feels
want
weird to be like, let's take a look at the pictures they took for this album, like
Well, we
I
can
don't
know that-
dedicate a couple of words to that because, well, so about the cover, we already spoke about how it does reflect the vibe of the album. There is a mountain and some barren landscape and fire in the background. So I think there isn't much more to comment
Yeah.
about this. But the photos are very sober. And so we had, okay, in the first album that didn't really matter. They are not in the booklet and so, but then on Voimasta we had the swords.
Yeah.
Kiva Encantaya we had again swords and chainmail, not so active, more posing, but with chainmail. In Verisaket they wanted to change completely. They are in the mud, so there is something. In these ones, they're just standing there with regular clothes.
Yeah, and the
Standing
music
regularly.
kind of sounds like that too, right? It sounds, there's less cosplay, like there's less Viking folk, like there has all of those elements.
That for sure, but it would be a bit closer to the mud photos.
Definitely.
But maybe those could work. I don't know, but this is like too atmospheric already for that. Maybe
I just think there's so much like synth and piano and different elements that I feel like it doesn't neatly fit into this like pagan thing anymore. And so like for example, I think it would look really weird for the people who made this album to be wearing corpse paint, like it's not really like playing a genre in a way that to me it kind of makes sense as this is the album where they kind of just like look like people.
Mm-hmm. And especially in this way with like the light behind them and being just dark figures basically, because it's even hard to tell who's who. At least two of them, I'm not sure who is Will and who is Marcus.
Can I see the picture you're looking at?
It's in the booklet.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, that's really similar to the cover of Varjona also.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
And there they have
costumes, yeah.
Costumes again.
This
like
ragged...
they're not exactly like like pagan metal, whatever, but they're still kind of like a costume. It kind of has a vibe. There is a costume.
This here they have leather jackets and chain hanging from the pocket, and they're almost thrash metalers.
Yeah.
No, you mean like true metalheads.
Yeah. But they are so dark that you cannot see their patches and things. So patches on the vest.
They're really bad now.
Ton 10 tin. Editing in.
If you like metal tourism, these pictures were taken at Kaivopuisto, which is a park in Helsinki. It's close to the city center, you can find it easily. And if you haven't seen the pictures and you don't have the booklet, you can see all of the promo pictures from all the eras on our Facebook page, Moonsorrow Biography and Podcast. Go to the page, go to the photo section, and you will find them, all of them there.
Tin 10 ton. Editing done.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've had a great conversation about these two songs and this album to the degree that we can, because it's not, the songs aren't about like, here is this. I mean, we haven't even talked at all about like, what is this song like lyrically about? Partly because Finnish Alexi isn't here to translate, and we have the translations, but still,
yeah, it's the same.
But it's not really the relationship that we have with the songs. I mean, I think we've done the best we can to describe what we hear when we listen to this album, and there's a lot of stuff to take in and talk about.
And maybe I never learn, but again, it took longer than I expected it to take, because it's one song of 26 minutes. Okay, it's very long and everything, but it's one song of 26 minutes, and we've been here for 3.5 hours.
Yeah, and I think that's that's great stuff about those two songs. It's we took a very long time to express a lot of ideas and feelings about very concrete stuff, like, oh, we have that time signature and stuff like that, but also about how we are related to those two songs in this album. I mean, we've done that before for the other albums, but the simple way that two songs can carry us through several hours of sharing thoughts and experiences is, for me, the ultimate proof that this album is an amazing piece of musical art in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's signed French Alexi.
Well, I mean, speaking of French Alexi, what that reminds me of is when
where is he now?
Well, when we were doing the Suden Uni episode, we could be like, this song has 11 sections, and sections 1, 5, and 7 are the same melody played in different ways,
Yeah.
And the thing is that, like, that exists on this album, right? Like we mentioned the one of the instances, like there's the da dun da da na na da dun da da na na na, which is the same. It is brought back up later with the da dun da da da. But the thing is that it's done so beautifully and at such a large scale that it's really hard to say, like, we used to be like, this album is guitar, bass, synth, violin, and a mouth harp, and it's 6 parts, and here's the 3 melodies, and which melodies do you like? But this thing is so, it works, it's like a living thing, where it has so many parts working in such complex ways that it's really hard to see the individual parts or even think of it in that way.
I agree with you. I have a very stupid thinking of thought about that. Is that few episodes before we were surgeons, like, I'm going to dissect this album and here's the guitar and stuff like that, and now we are just judges on Top Chef. I love the way you put the peppermint and stuff like that, and
absolutely,
it's very nicely presented, packed full of flavors. Probably my favorite English sentence of all time.
That's actually a really interesting analogy, because when you listen to, like, Gordon Ramsay tell somebody that their, like, soup sucks, he's like, look, here's the 4 flavors your soup is supposed to have, and here's the part that you're messing up on, right? But when you're listening to any content that's, like, about really, really good, well-made food, they're almost never explaining, like, well, a hamburger should taste like this, and this is how they did it well. It's always these, like, abstract, like, oh, this is so flavorful, this is so interesting, this is so, like, inspired, and
in a way you still have all those like section and transition and flavors, if I can say so, but because they're so nicely blend, you just see a blend in the continuity or something, and not a succession. I'm going too far away with that food comparison, but
I know that Moonsorrow has these eras, right, where they will, like, kind of follow an idea, and then that idea climaxes, and then they're like, no, we're not going to make Heathen Podcast 2, we're going to start something new, and they go to Verisaket, and then Verisaket kind of builds up to Hävitetty, and then, like, oh, we're not going to do Hävitetty 2, we're going to do something else, we're going to go to Varjona or Tuleen or whatever. But I feel like this album, to me, stands out as, like, a masterpiece. I think I love the other albums. I don't think they do what Hävitetty does, right? And part of it's because, like, they probably realized, I mean, I think they said as much, like, oh, okay, if all of our songs are 30 minutes, we can't play anything live, so let's do shorter songs. I mean, I think it was after this that they started saying, like, okay, we're gonna do shorter songs. and they kept like not doing it, right? Like but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like this is I think it's their masterpiece. I don't know how they feel about it. I don't know if they say like, yeah, that's like the best album we ever made, and then other things we love, or they each have their own thing or whatever. But it feels like there's just something special about this album that, I mean, no one could really expect to do again, right? It's not that the other albums are, yeah. Abel, when you talk to them about the album, what do they think about it? Is it just an album and they're like, yeah, you know, that was good, I also like this other album? Or did it feel to them like a significant work?
Yeah, they consider it significant, although it seems so. It's very much Henry's thing, partially Ville's as well. I don't know what happened with Ville during that period, but apparently he was also going through a bad moment. And it seems like the others talk about it as if they were just participating like externally as guests, kind of. On a more prosaic side of things, I think it was Ville or whoever mentioned how Ville and Henry were fighting the whole recording process, and they were, because, you know, both were going through bad moments, and bands, I think they usually argue, I mean, maybe on different terms, but this time they were arguing about everything, and everything was so tense. And yeah, it seems like it was like a thing of the two cousins, and the others were just, okay, I'm playing this part and I'm doing this, and all right.
Yeah, they're like, okay,
but I think all of them see it as something important, because, you know, it was the first time they did such long songs, and it is very intense music and very intense everything.
Any closing notes?
You're better at those.
Okay, well, this is how it ends. This page will be the last, the emptiness to oblivion, and none will ever return.
I think the whole Hävitetty album was a product by Mr. Henry Sorvali, and pretty much only him, except for the lyrics, of course. But I didn't do much for that. I didn't write. I may have offered stuff, but it was mostly Henry with his very rough time in his life, very rough period, a lot of shit happening at home, and who knows what with his mental health, and all of that influenced on how that album became.
I don't have that many good memories about recording the album, because it was the most complicated time in my personal life. It definitely was the most complicated time in Henry's personal life, and we were basically in the studio together, having our own problems and constantly just arguing. It definitely wasn't fun to make that album, but looking at the other side, you can hear it on the album. It is very, very dark, and it almost crushes you under its weight. So I guess we managed to channel our negative feelings into music, and this was, in my musical career, it was the perfect example of channeling emotions into, well, lyrics, because I didn't make the music. It is a very heavy album, and there are certain reasons I don't like to listen to that album that much.
I know a lot of people are telling that that's the best stuff we have ever done. Fair enough. I can see why. It is an ambitious album, and I would love to play the whole album live as it is someday, with the big production, big stage, whole band, including Henry, because it is so personal to him. So it would be nice to get him on stage and maybe finally get rid of his demons, what he was having during the period we did the album.
And what you have heard now was recorded by Sasan with his acoustic guitar. Okay, here ends our analysis of Hävitetty. The next release in the Moonsorrow chronology is Tuleen, but that is not what the next episode will be about. What else, you ask? Well, you will have to wait and see. But you will get a very strong clue in a special bonus that will come out before the next regular episode. Follow the podcast on any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you're listening right now. Just follow us to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes. As I said in the intro, leave us a comment somewhere, tell us something. You can find us as Moonsorrow Podcast on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. And we would love to know your thoughts about the podcast and any suggestions you may have for our future episodes, besides the obvious album analysis, because yes, we will do all of them. Any other ideas are welcome. Thanks for listening, over and out.